Here it goes. All right, good morning, everybody. It's good to have you. So let me remind you that by signing into this, you get a link from Kim. Kim sends you out a replay link if you want to see it one more time, or if you want to show it to someone else, that's not a problem. This morning, we're going to be talking about understanding the roles and responsibilities of the Scrum projects. This is kind of came about this year as I started looking at all the changes that they made on the PMP. Those of you who've already got your PMP and had it for a long time, like I have, we're used to going through. The emphasis was primarily on PMBOK up until the last couple of changes. Was primarily on PMBOK and inputs, outputs, tools, and all of those type of things. And so then in 2022 they changed, and PMI was backing away from using PMBOK as one of the main drivers for the test. And so the new PMBOK 7, is from a systems standpoint, as you already know, compared to the process standpoint of all the previous PMBOKs. So anyway, they made other changes too, specifically to the PMP test, in that almost 50% of the PMP test is on Agile. And so that changed the whole nature of people who were coming from traditional projects, and then they're being tested also on the Agile piece. And so we have people show up in our boot camps all the time, and their first statement is, I don't know anything about Agile. And so, and half the test is going to be on Agile. So if by chance you happen to be one of those people, one of the best books that you can just buy on Agile that will help you is just pick up or download a copy of the standard from PMI. If you are a member of PMI, they have it in their library, and I don't think it even costs you anything to at least read it. So it's has a big black cover, and it's Agile. It's the Agile Project Management Standard. And so that will lay some foundation for you if you're wanting to learn more about this. But this morning, what we're going to do is talk about some roles. So we're going to talk about the roles of Scrum. And then I've also added a couple of little slides in here to talk about a couple of roles that you probably, if you're running Scrum, will have to deal with, because you're dealing with it from a hybrid standpoint. And so when you get into those situations, you'll see that there's a couple of extra roles that you typically don't see in Scrum. So let's get started this morning. Understanding the roles and responsibilities of Scrum. So here's some objectives that we're going to hit in this next hour. So clearly explain the roles, responsibilities for all of those in Scrum/Agile, because we're going to tiptoe over into some hybrid stuff here in just a little bit. Discuss how these roles interact and collaborate within the Scrum and Agile project and how they add value. To explore the challenges of the role. Also to show some type of scenario to help you navigate the role with Scrum and Agile. So we're going to try to give you a little bit of a scenario so that you can see this. Those of you who run Scrum all the time, you deal with these roles. However, many times our roles don't fit exactly what the book says, does it? Sometimes the Scrum Master is having to do stuff that maybe the book doesn't say they're supposed to be doing. And so we do what we have to do to make our project successful. So let's give you a little bit of an overview of Scrum. Scrum is a framework and practice designed to increase the speed at which the customer receives value and product features for a project. Scrum and Agile have evolved in the last 20 years by moving away from traditional project management, delivering the entire project at its end, to providing a portion of the project's features at the end of each short sprint. So when we're talking about Scrum and Agile, we're really talking about looking at it through totally different eyes rather than traditional. Traditional, we provide everything at the end. We know the scope up front. We maybe have change orders, but we know the scope up front. We provide that scope at the end. Agile and Scrum is the exact opposite. We're trying to provide something to that customer in periodic handoffs to that customer so that they can begin using it. That's the reason why it says give them some value. So they're able to get so many features in a distance, certain amount of time. And so most of the time you're looking to run your sprints somewhere between 1 to 4 weeks. Probably the sweet spot that you hear is somewhere around a couple of weeks that you're trying to hand off so many features to that customer so that they can have some time working with that new technology or those new features. Also with Scrum and Agile, it's like a traditional in that it's not a one size fits all. One of the big emphasis that many of you have picked up on is PMI has gone to the mindset of tailoring, and tailoring is spot on because all of us have had to do this over the years with our project management methodologies and frameworks. So what we're having to do is, for an example, those of you who've been using traditional for a long time, you've been like all of us have, you don't need all of PMBOK to run all of our projects. Oh my gosh, we would just poke me in the eye if I had to fill out every form and have every kind of log that PMBOK talks about. Many of our projects don't use a lot of that stuff. So for in real life, we spend our time trying to customize our process for our company, for our culture, for the type of project. PMI has really jumped on board with that with the new PMBOK 7, and they're talking about the tailoring piece, which is so powerful in doing what we've been trying to do in real life actually all these years. So when we look at Scrum and Agile, you're looking at it, it changes it. It's not a one size fits all. And even Scrum, even though we've got Scrum framework that we're going to be using, you'll find that there might be pieces of Scrum for your company or for your organization that you're having to do it a little differently. It's not fitting the box, and you're having to say, well, okay, well, we don't normally have a project manager in Scrum, but we got one at our company. And I get it, because that's what it took to be able to use Scrum inside your organization. So we're going to refer back to that in just a moment. Scrum and Agile, though, focus on customer satisfaction, delivering values. The value that we're talking about primarily is giving them something early. So the emphasis that we're really trying to do is how can we do something faster? How can we do something with all the change orders that we experience in a traditional command and control style? And how can we hand something off to the customer to where they're pleased as we move along? All right, so there's that shift in mindset. And so those of you who were like me, who've used nothing but traditional for a lot of years, it was a hard shift because we're so used to controlling everything all the way through. Most project managers, we do have control issues, don't we? And so we want to control it from start to finish. And boy, we're going to make somebody sign off if there's a change order. And that's how the world ran back then. But today, what you're seeing, Scrum and Agile requires a different way of thinking versus traditional. And so some 20 plus years ago, when they started experimenting, when Sutherland and some of the other colleagues from software designers started experimenting with another way of doing it, it was because they were getting caught in all these change orders and they were not being able to deliver something as fast as they wanted to. So traditional project management gathered the scope at the beginning, but then it controlled it, which is fine in many of our projects, but probably not in some of our software or product development type of projects. So Scrum and Agile gathers the scope for each sprint. They deliver that scope of sprint to the customer at the end of a 2 weeks iteration or sprint. And that customer is able to start using it. And then what happens is you start planning for the next sprint to hand them off another 10 or 15 features and so forth. And so that's what you're looking at in giving them small bite-sized pieces of the project. So that mindset had to shift. So teams move from receiving decisions already made about the project to creating their estimates, making decisions throughout the project. So one of the biggest shifts was that rather than a project manager making the decision, or rather than a project manager deciding a lot of things and even bringing drafts to the project team, the team's calling a lot of the shots. They're making the decisions, they're doing the estimates, they're looking at the amount of work and deciding whether or not they can provide that work in that amount of time. So the teams moved away from asking permission to making the decision. That's still a little bit of a struggle in many of our organizations. That's why many of you don't have full-blown Scrum teams, because that's not how you're structured, or that's not how management has structured things. So the teams move away from status meetings to real dashboards that monitor the key metrics. And so the team is actually looking to see how many features are we handing off to the customer, how many user stories, how many story points, depending on how you're counting this. That's exactly what the team is doing. They're looking to see, can we pick up a velocity or a rhythm in giving the customer so much work or so many features so that they're able to start using it and giving us feedback. Now, let's start off with the most common role. One of the most common roles is the product owner. The product owner role is a very important role if we're using Agile/Scrum, because Scrum's your most popular Agile type of framework, which is kind of interesting. Almost many of the books that you've read about it will say that Scrum's the most popular, but Scrum actually is older than when we started hearing about Agile. So it's interesting that we look at Agile as a category and Scrum as one of those. So that's okay. I don't care. And you shouldn't either. The point is it's there and we're being able to use it. But the product owner is the person who's responsible for the features and the user stories or the story points. The product owner has a lot of the characteristics that many of us have as a project manager in interviewing the customer, working with the customer, representing the customer side. For a matter of fact, for those of you who have BAs, business analysts in your world, you probably look at the product owner and think, wow, there's a lot of BA stuff, business analyst stuff. I want to make sure I'm using the right B here. So BA stuff, business analyst stuff in the product owner, and you're absolutely correct. because the product owner represents the customer continues to be able to have flexibility to rank and reprioritize the features or the requirements. And the product owner is always representing that customer sitting there at the team. So the product owner is a very powerful person who's saying, this is what we need to be doing next. And so they manage the product backlog by reprioritizing it, refining it, is what it's called. Some of you maybe have heard the old term, which was grooming. They're all the same thing, but that's their role, is to constantly make sure we're working on the most important features at all time. So they make sure that the team members understand what the customer wants. And so the team and the product owner really work side by side. Product owner representing what the customer wants. The team is trying to provide it. And as close to the prioritized order as what the customer asks for. The product owner scenario that I wanted to give you here, the Scrum team gathers the sprint planning meeting. For the sprint planning meeting, the product owner, Sarah, has already prepared the product backlog. She starts the meeting by reviewing it, which contains various user stories and features to be implemented. So Sarah, the product owner, has taken the big product backlog and really broken it down in what's called a sprint backlog. And that sprint backlog is for that sprint that the team is listening to, and they're talking and communicating. Sarah's responsible for making sure that these are the most important things to the customer right now. The team is looking at it as to how long it's going to take to do those particular features. Now, a lot of times when we look at this in a book, we talk about it like the product owner just kind of lays the law down. These are the next 15 features, and the team says, well, here's how long it's going to take, and that's it. That's not how it works at all. They negotiate. They talk it through, and in many cases, the team might even come back and say, okay, we can do all of those, but this particular feature here really requires two other things to happen before we can provide that. Now, those of you who've done this in the real world know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of that give and take, and then everyone kind of agrees this is the scope for the 2-week sprint. The team then goes ahead and fleshes it out. They start working on it. And then at the end, they deliver those 15 features. So it's very important for you to be able to understand that, because sometimes the way it works in the real world compared to in a book is totally different. Product owner's role in the meeting. Sarah explains that the highest priority for this sprint is to implement a new, more secure payment gateway, as the client has emphasized the need for an enhanced security due to recent industry regulations. She's ranked this feature on the top of the backlog, ensuring the team understands its importance in maximizing the product's value. So you notice that we've given you some narrative of what she's talking about, what she's saying. So security, and so she's describing this really from the customer's point of view. She also points out other user stories in the backlog, such as refining the product search function and improving the mobile interface. These items are prioritized based on the client's feedback and the product vision to make the platform both user-friendly and secure. So she's giving a totality. Even though some of these might not be something they're working on yet, she's already kind of pre-planning or pre-loading their idea that these are coming down the priority list in future sprints. All right, so the product owner's main responsibility is going to be this. From the customer's standpoint, they're going to deliver vision and strategy, define and communicate the product vision and strategy to the team and stakeholders, prioritize the product backlog items based on business value that the customer is looking at. And also technical feasibility. And that's why I said a lot of times you'll have a little bit of give and take on some of these, and that's the real world too. The backlog management is the responsibility of the product owner, not a team of people, but the product owner. And the reason for that is somebody needs to be responsible for making sure that it is prioritized. So they create and maintain the product backlog. They ensure the backlog items are well defined, clear, understood, and they have input into the sprint backlog. Now, depending on who you read, some will say that the product owner creates a sprint backlog. Some texts that you read, they'll say that the team creates a sprint backlog. And let me just say it doesn't even matter to me, is because both are sitting there trying to work through this. The team has to agree to it and the product owner has to agree to it. So they're all working together on the same thing. So regardless of what author you lean toward, it really doesn't make any difference. If they don't agree on the sprint backlog, we're going to have trouble in this next iteration anyway. But that's exactly it. The sprint owner, the product owner, it might be making recommendations. Obviously, they will. And then you're going to have the team saying yes or no to it as well. Stakeholder communications. The product owner is going to act as the primary liaison between the stakeholder and the development team. They're going to gather feedback from stakeholders, customers to refine the backlog. So they're helping with communication, not just the team. Acceptance criteria. The product owner is going to define acceptance criteria for the product items, ensure they're meeting, that they are met during the development, review and accept or reject work results from the development team. So as the customer is receiving something, the customer is going to understand what they're receiving at the end of each sprint, because at the end of each sprint, they're going to go through what's called a demo. Some of you maybe call it a review, that's fine, but a demo to where the team is going to demonstrate what the features or functionality is for this sprint. The customer is going to see that, and then they're going to receive those pieces of that backlog for them to start using. And then, of course, the team is actually going to do a retrospective, which is very similar to lessons learned, to be able to decide what they're going to do and what they did good, what they did bad, and what they need to do next time. So they're learning after every sprint. So this acceptance criteria is there. So if the customer comes back and says, wow, this isn't working at all like what we thought, that's going to be communicated to the team so that those items can either be fixed, worked back into the backlog, or at least the team understands what the requirements need to be from that point forward. The challenges with the product owner. Prioritizing features and requirements effectively in the backlog. It is a challenge. Those of you who are product owners, you know how challenging it is, because sometimes the product owner might not be since we're talking technology, might not be the best technology person, but they're awesome at running a project, running a backlog, working with a customer. They have all those skills. So they're having to work with experts over here on the side of the technology. Balancing stakeholder needs with technical constraints. There's certain technology, we're having to do it a certain way. All of you who are doing technology projects, you know what I'm talking about. There's certain steps. That's why you're giving input so many times to that product owner. And then you're making decisions rapidly to avoid delays. The whole reason we're doing Scrum and Agile or any kind of flavor of that is so that we can have a speedy delivery of that product and those features to the customer as quick as possible. All right, let's go to the next role, Scrum Master. Some people have mistakenly thought that a Scrum Master and a project manager are the same thing, that we have just changed the title. Scrum Masters don't have power, and so you're not really wanting to use this as another name for a project manager. So if you're using Agile and Scrum, the Scrum Master serves more as a facilitator, a coach for the Scrum team. They facilitate a lot of meetings. They really try to pick up information and pass information along, but their main emphasis is on the Scrum methodology, the Scrum practices, so that they're making sure that people are using the framework of Scrum. They can help remove impediments, so they're trying to solve problems. Some mistakenly think, though, that they're the project manager and they have the same authority as a project manager, and so that's not even close. So you want to use, if you're going to use Scrum and Agile and you have a Scrum Master, don't put them in a role of Scrum, trying to be a project manager in a Scrum setting, because this role normally does not have that level of power. Now, the Scrum Master scenario here, the Scrum team convenes to plan the upcoming sprint. They review the prioritized product backlog with the product owner. Sarah has prepared, and the Scrum Master, John, facilitates the meeting. This fits the bulk of what is defined about a Scrum Master. They're there to assist, they're there to help. Scrum Master's role in the meeting, John starts the meeting by ensuring the team understands the sprint goals. He encourages each team member to voice concerns about the user stories or tasks they're assigned. One developer, Maria, expresses uncertainty about integrating a third-party API due to potential compatibility issues with the current system architecture. So notice what the Scrum Master is doing. He or she's not making decisions. They are facilitating a meeting. They're making sure everybody gets heard. Recognizing this potential impediment, John asked the team to brainstorm solutions. Did John solve it? Of course not. He's the Scrum Master. He has no power. He also offers to connect Maria with a technical expert within the organization who has experience with this particular API, thus helping to remove a roadblock that could hinder the team's progress. So you see, you get that flavor. John's helping solve problems, but he's not the solver of the problem. Scrum Master's responsibilities. The biggest is going to be facilitation, facilitate the Scrum ceremonies, daily stand-ups, sprint planning, sprint reviews, sprint retrospectives. All of those would be some of the things that the Scrum Master would be facilitating. They ensure the meetings are productive, focused on objectives. They're there to help. They're not there to make all the decisions. The team is really the one making the most decisions. And of course, the product owner with the customer is making the decision on what comes next. Coaching and support is very much part of a Scrum Master. Coach the development team, the product owner on Scrum and Agile principles, Scrum practices. You might have new people who don't understand Scrum and all they understand is traditional. So it's going to take a little bit of a learning curve to get them switched over. You're fostering a collaborative and self-organizing environment within the team. Remember, this Scrum team, this Agile team is not asking for permission. They are running wide open on trying to execute. Execution is everything in this. And so they're running wide open to execute. Your product owner is running wide open to make sure that everything is prioritized so that what they're executing is the next piece of work the customer wants. Process management. The Scrum Master ensures the team follows the Scrum and Agile practices, continuously improves its processes, monitors and reports on the team's progress and performance. And as many of you know who've been doing this for a long time, you know that in the early stages of Scrum and Agile, as you start running those iterations, that's the clumsiest time for your team. You're still learning each other. You're learning what to do, what comes next. And so it's one of those things that you've got a little bit of a learning curve as a team. But after you've run 3 or 4 sprints, you're starting to pick up how many items or user stories or features you're going to be able to deliver to that customer in a 2-week sprint. And now you can start projecting what and how long it's going to take for that project to be finished. The customer has 300 user stories, and you're delivering 15 a week, and 14 one week, and 12 another week. And so in three iterations, I can do an average and start projecting a range of when we're going to finish this project. The Scrum Master challenges. Well, one of the challenges is overcoming resistance to change within the team. If a team has spent all their time working for a project manager, they're not used to making decisions, they're used to making recommendations. And that's going to slow the process down. The other thing that a Scrum Master might have, if they've come from being a project manager, is realizing it's not about them. They don't get to make the decision. They don't get to decide. They're there to facilitate. And sometimes it's easier to make the decision than to facilitate others to do it. So they're trying to make sure people are adhering to Scrum principles. At the same time, they want the team to be autonomous, not having to ask permission, but running the project. They're also facilitating communication to the members and other stakeholders, because they might be the ones behind the scenes talking with management and passing some of that along. They are a coach. They're a mentor. So people who don't have experience might be spending more time with them than others. All right, let's talk about the customer. So your customer doesn't get off the hook of being able to tell you everything up front, and then you see them 18 months later, and then they don't like what we've done. I'm sure that doesn't happen to your projects, but I've heard through the grapevine it's happened to some of us. All right, so a couple of things about the customer. Your customer is very active in Scrum and Agile. They've got a seat at the table, literally, because at every demo, you've got a customer representative who's looking at the technology or looking at the features that your team has produced in that last iteration. So the customer focuses on making the requirements clear, precise, and prioritized with the product owner. So the customer gives the requirements to the product owner, who actually ranks them so that everybody can see it, everybody on the team understands it. At the end of the sprint, the customer is part of the demo. They're sitting at the table, looking at the new features, asking questions, and getting some of that knowledge transferred over to them that these features work in this particular way. So they're going to be sitting there with at least a couple of times at the end of every demo, watching what this technology does. Now, the customer also, after the demo, the customer will begin using the features and functionality. Throughout the next few weeks, the customer starts giving feedback. And so that feedback, they start letting people know, how does these features and functionality work according to the product roadmap, which is like their master list our master vision for that project. And so if it's working good, everything's fine. If not, then here's where we're needing to tweak it a little bit. Now, remember, the reason why most people are using Scrum and Agile is because what they're trying to do is they're trying to use it on something new. It's usually used on a new technology. We've never done this before. We're hitting a moving target out here. So those are all the characteristics of why we're doing this in the first place. And so you're looking to see, okay, are we providing a product that's going to meet the definition of done? And the definition of done is that definition that has come from that customer saying, once we do this, that product is finished. And of course, as we know, sometimes customers will add features. I'm sure that doesn't happen to you, but they start evolving in what the definition of done is. And so we have challenges with that, don't we? Now, let's look at our customer scenario. So let's look at a software company working on a new mobile app for a retail client. The client is serving as the customer begins by outlining their essential requirements. And so a user-friendly interface, a secure payment gateway, and seamless integration with existing systems, those are all some of the requirements. The customer engages continuously with the product owner, gives direction on various requirements while making decisions on new ones for the project. So the customer is very much active and part of everything that we're doing and saying and reviewing about this project. So what are some of their responsibilities as a customer? End user feedback. They provide feedback on the product from an end user perspective. They are actually doing that end user testing. They're playing with the product. They're looking to see how those features work. So here's the goal. If we are wrong, we want to be wrong early. Man, we don't want to go through 15 sprints and the customer goes, yeah, this is not even close. You're wanting to be wrong way earlier than this. And so you participate in user acceptance testing to validate the product's usability to functionality. So that end user feedback. Second is going to be requirement clarification. What we heard and what we produced might not be what the customer really wanted. Now, we heard what the customer said, but so that product owner, along with the customer, might be clarifying what the real goal is here, what the real requirement is. We heard it, we missed it, and that happens sometimes. But that's what you're really looking for, is for the product, for the product owner and for the customer to be able to say, here's really what that particular requirement is going to be. So the customer challenges is going to always be providing clear and consistent requirements. Many times the customer, especially on your newer technology, as all of you know, might be something that they haven't even thought about. Maybe it has features that they don't even know it has. Maybe it has capabilities they don't even know. Maintaining engagement, collaboration throughout the project, managing expectations regarding delivery and timelines and quality. So that customer can't just say, I need these 50 features by next Friday. The customer doesn't have that authority because remember, the team is what's making the decision. The customer can say, I need these 50 features, and they're the next 50, but the team is deciding with the help of the product owner what the sequence is going to be. I'm sorry, how many of those 50 they're going to be working on. The product owner is deciding the sequence representing the customer. The team is deciding how many of those 50 can they work on the next sprint. Let's talk about the team. This is a high-functioning, cross-functional type of team. These men and women are not asking permission. They are making decisions. And this is what bogs us down so many times, is that we're trying to do Scrum and Agile, but we're trying to put them in a hybrid situation and give them no power. And so we've stripped them of the power, and that's the very thing that we're wanting them to have. We want them to make the decision. So the development team is responsible for delivering a potentially releasable product increment at the end of each sprint. Remember, we're giving it to the customer in pieces, but it is something that has to work. The team is cross-functional. They have necessary skills to make the decision. The product owner is working with them at the same time, and the team is the one who does the estimates, not the project manager, not management, not the product owner, and definitely not the customer. The team is deciding how long it's going to take to do and work and make create these particular features. And so they will talk it out with the product owner in many cases, but anyway, they're the ones who are doing the estimates for the time frame. The development team scenario that might help you. So the development team composed of 5 members with diverse skills in development, design, testing, review the user stories in detail. They discuss the requirements with Sarah to clarify any ambiguities and ensures that they fully understand what's needed. After thorough discussion, the team estimates the size of each story using story points to gauge the effort required. They collectively decide that they are confidently complete. They can confidently complete the work within upcoming 2-week sprint, and the team then commits to delivering these stories by the end of the sprint. Now, I went ahead and used for the scenario estimating in story points, but you don't have to use story points. You can do it based on features. You can do it based on hours. You can do it based on user stories, ever how you're calculating it right now. But the point is, many people are using story points, and story point is a fictitious calculation based on some type of time period. And so you might have one story point is equal to 5 hours. And so the point is you and your team are setting the story point standard of how to interpret that. With the development team, throughout the sprint, the development team works collaboratively, leveraging their cross-functional skills. They regularly hold daily stand-ups. This is that 15-minute meeting in the morning to discuss progress and address any roadblocks. Whenever a technical challenge arises, the team members brainstorm and troubleshoot, ensuring they stay on track. Now, one piece of information that maybe you haven't caught on to, and I haven't said either, is that when we're talking about true blue agile Scrum, you're normally only working on one project at a time. In the world of perfects, you're co-located too. And so almost every book you're reading talks about co-location. And since 2022, this is not something I have seen in any company we've worked with. Nobody has had their team working on just one project, and nobody has had them co-located. And the reason for that, I think, is because we're all running that skeleton crew. Now, maybe your situation's a little different, but we're running that skeleton crew since COVID. And so what's happening is that you don't have enough resources really to work on just one project at a time. So every project team member, they might be running a Scrum project and working on that, but they're working on 3 to 5 projects is what's happening, what we're seeing since 2022 across the country. So that's going to slow down the project a little bit as well. So you're not co-locating these folks, you're not turning around and putting them on one project at a time. And maybe your situation's different, but that's what we're seeing as well. And so that technical challenge. And so whenever a technical challenge arises, the team brainstorms, they troubleshoot, because remember, in a perfect setting, they're co-located, we're talking to each other across the table, because this is where we work all day long together. So as the sprint progresses, the team continuously integrates their work, ensuring the product increment is always in a potentially releasable state. By the end of the sprint, the deliverables are fully developed, tested, ready for release. Now, when we say tested here, we're talking about they're working. It maybe has not had the regression testing to the overall system yet, but it means that we've tested it enough that this sucker works and we can hand it off to the customer and have them start telling us what some things are they like or don't like about it. But you still might have a sprint down the road that has the full regression testing. So I just want to kind of plug that in. It doesn't mean that 2-week sprint has had every kind of test that many of you run on much of the technology. So as the sprint review, the demo, the development team demonstrates the completed product increment to Sarah and the other stakeholders. The team showcases the functionality of the customer database and the contract form, explaining how the features meet the requirements set by Sarah. And then this is handed to the customer. This is not a release. You might have 4 or 5 sprints per release, but you are giving them something that is working for them to begin working with. The development team responsibilities. Normally, they're going to be cross-functional. They work collaboratively as a cross-functional team. They contribute to all aspects of the product development, including coding, testing, design, whatever that case may be. Those of you who are working on products, then you're working on the totality of that product. Somebody on your team is giving input all the way through of all the various components of that product. A sprint commitment to deliver a potentially shippable product increment at the end of each sprint. You estimate, you plan the work to be completed within each sprint. And so the team has to be on the same page. I mean, they have to be knit together in order to be able to communicate and show that commitment all the way across. Continuous improvement. This is a huge deal for PMI. PMBOK 7 has really pushed this. Even the PMP test is pushing this even stronger. And so we should be continuing to improve. And so participate in sprint retrospectives to identify areas for improvement. implement process improvements, refine technical practices continuously. And once again, the team has the authority to be able to make recommendations for continuous improvement. They're not having to ask permission. They have the authority to be able to do that. Quality assurance, ensure the work meets the definition of done, adheres to quality standards, conduct peer reviews, and collaborate on testing efforts. And so here's the thing that we challenge us sometimes is that we think, well, if we're doing it this fast, we can't possibly be keeping up with quality. And yet you are. You're keeping up with the quality, but it doesn't mean that you have taken care of 100% of all the quality issues. You're taking care of just enough to let the customer start working with it. Challenges with the team, handling changing requirements, frequent iterations, ensuring high quality deliverables within the short development cycles, collaborating effectively, especially with non-technical stakeholders like me. And so what happens is that we've got to talk it through. We've got to make it simple. And there is a lot of collaboration with other stakeholders that might be involved in different pieces, or you need them as a resource temporarily. All right, so let's talk about a role that you might not have that might be advantageous to you. Several texts have come out on this. A couple of certifications have come out on this from Scrum Alliance. And so this is the Scrum or the Agile coach role. And so they help the team and organization adopt a Scrum Agile practice or principles. A lot of times when you see this role, you're watching an organization who's trying to switch over to Scrum. And so they're hiring a Scrum coach to come in and help teach, coach, mentor people who are switching over maybe from waterfall over to that Scrum Agile position. So they work at a very high level with the Scrum Master. They focus on broader organizational change. They focus on continuous improvement. But what they're trying to do is change the culture and work with the people to change the culture from traditional over to something more agile or Scrum. The Scrum Agile coach typically has more experience than others within the project working with Scrum and Agile. They're willing to share that tacit knowledge of how to do it. And they assess the team's maturity and they recommend steps for continuous improvement. And so you've got an experienced person there coaching these folks through. Now, they're not going to stay with you forever. Don't make that mistake. This person that's there, that if you're bringing in a vendor, they're going to be there for a project to get everybody kind of trained up. And then you might find someone internally that now can take over this role to help duplicate it. It's almost like I'm going to say train the trainer or coach the coach kind of thing. So what you're trying to do is switch this over so you're not using a vendor continuously and be able to pass this on to where the older, more experienced person who has worked with Scrum for a long time, which might not be age. I say older because it might have nothing to do with age. I'm talking about older with that particular methodology is now coaching other people. The Scrum Agile coach scenario. So Lisa, an experienced Scrum Agile coach, begins by assessing the maturity of the various Scrum teams within the organization. She observes their daily stand-ups, sprint reviews, and retrospectives, taking note of the team's understanding and application of Agile's principles. With her extensive experience, Lisa begins coaching the teams, mainly focusing on those who are less mature in their Agile practices. She freely shares her tacit knowledge, offering insights into effective backlog grooming, that's refinement, sprint planning, and importance of iterative development. For an example, she runs workshops to demonstrate how to break down user stories into smaller, more manageable tasks, which helps the team improve their sprint velocity. You remember velocity is the average number of story points, user stories that we are doing per iteration. That's what the velocity is. Also, Lisa also works at a high level, advising the company's leadership on broader organizational changes necessary for Agile to thrive. She suggests restructuring some departments to better align with Agile practices and encourages a cultural shift towards transparency and continuous improvement. So you can see how this Agile coach is coming in, not only taking care of the team, but they're also working backwards with management, trying to get management and the culture to shift. Over time, Lisa reassesses the team's and the organization's Agile maturity. She notes improvement team dynamics, fast delivery times, and higher product quality. However, she also identifies areas where further improvements needed. So she's functioning as a consultant there to help transform the organization over to a more fluid type of organization for Agile and Scrum. All right, so what are some of the coach's responsibilities? It's going to be training and mentorship, Provide training and mentorship to the Scrum Master, product owner, development team on Scrum and Agile methodologies. So you can see if she's doing this, this is going to require, excuse me, if she's going to do this, this requires an experienced person to be able to do this. Process optimization. Guide the organization in adopting and scaling Agile and Scrum practices. So we're trying to tailor it to what we really need, even though we're using Scrum and Agile. Identify and resolve challenges in Agile and Scrum adoption and implementation. And you'll find yourself having to decide what can we do, what are we needing to use, and what do we not need. Other challenges might be training and mentoring teams in Scrum and Agile practices. Some people are much more receptive to training and mentoring than others. Also addressing cultural and organizational resistance. Some folks are just kind of get bullheaded and don't want to change. We've done it traditional all these years and waterfall. Why are we changing? We need to stay the way we are. And so you might be fighting that type of culture. And then, of course, measuring and improving the performance over time, because once again, you're looking for success as you get ready to shift these around. Let's talk about stakeholders. Stakeholder is anybody who has a vested interest in the project. They include customer, users, other individuals, and groups with some type of vested interest. While they are not part of the Scrum team, their feedback is crucial to the project's success. And so once again, if you're influencing the organization, you're going to have stakeholders who's not setting in on the team, but their vision of what's happening or their verbiage of what's happening can make it or break it for everyone else. So all projects include stakeholders, but the engagement of the stakeholders is different in traditional projects compared to Agile and Scrum, which require more input. We want to be connected to those stakeholders. So the product should be the focus of the stakeholders as they validate it's working correctly or identify which areas need changing. Each stakeholder helps set the expectations on functionality and confirming what works. So as we hand this off to the customer, this is the group that might be working with this. And so in other words, you might have one person or two people who are attending the demo, and then they're taking it back, and then their work group happens to be the stakeholders who are using this new technology. Stakeholder scenario for this, Charlie as stakeholder provides feedback during the sprint review. He explains that without project priority levels, the dashboard will not meet the needs of the operations team. Charlie suggests additional features to align with the organization to be a priority. And so you need this type of feedback because once again, you've now opened it up to where you've got several people trying out the new technology or the new product. Stakeholder responsibility would be to give feedback and requirements, provide input and feedback on the product vision, strategy, backlog, participate in a sprint review, and provide feedback on the product increment. Now, you don't necessarily have to have every stakeholder at the demo. Don't make that mistake. But you might have a specialist on your side that you want setting there as you deal with certain types of features that are coming about. Also support and engage. Engage with the product owner regularly to ensure alignment with the business goal. Support the Scrum Agile process, respecting the roles and responsibilities. And so what you're really wanting to do is to build that work to where, in other words, you don't have anybody coming in to dictate anything because the team is being given and empowered to be able to make so many of those decisions. The challenges with the stakeholder is understanding the Scrum or Agile process, their role within it, managing expectations about iterative development and frequent changes, and also providing timely feedback to guide the project direction. So they're not just sitting there, they're not just being talked to, they're giving feedback, they're evaluating. And so the quality is going to be an intensive piece here from the stakeholders. Now, let me chase a rabbit here just to make sure you hear this. In order for the stakeholders to give you good quality feedback, they have to understand what the quality standard should be for that particular piece of work. So minimum viable product, MVP, is going to be an important piece of what, and also definition of done. What type of product are we doing? What type of features are we supposed to have? It's possible for your stakeholders to try to raise the bar and decide they want more features than what was supposed to be part of the minimum viable product or the definition of done. So all of that has to be kind of reverbalized at some of these meetings to make sure that you don't have a renegade running off with something. All right, so let's look at a project manager's role. I know you might be saying, wait a second, I thought they were not in Scrum. You're absolutely right. A project manager is not in Scrum, but many of you are running Scrum and Agile is what you're doing, Scrum and traditional. You're running that hybrid type of project. So for those of you who are, I went ahead and added this so that we can talk about this. All right, so in Scrum and Agile environments, a project manager may handle responsibilities outside of the Scrum or Agile framework, particularly in larger organizations and complex projects. When organizations use a project manager, they're sometimes running a hybrid instead of a Scrum or Agile project, and they tailor the processes to work within their culture. Now, many of you are in this situation right now. You're trying to do the development of the software or the implementation of the new software or the creation of the product. You're doing it in a Agile or a Scrum fashion, but you're still reporting to a traditional organization through a project manager. So many of you are living this world even as we speak. So the project manager's main role would be to coordinate activities across multiple Scrum or Agile teams, verify each team is following the product roadmap, which is the vision, goals, and objectives of the product. They facilitate the integration of Scrum Agile with other methodologies or processes in the organization. So if you do have a project manager role with your Scrum and Agile, it is hybrid, and you and the project manager and even the organization is having to decide where that level is of hybrid, because one hybrid might not be like another hybrid. One might be able to do almost everything in Agile and only have a little bit of reporting at other times, and while others might be totally almost traditional, with the exception of one team who's functioning in a Scrum or Agile manner. So we have to understand exactly what that might be. The scenario for the project manager, the project's complex, involving multiple Scrum teams working on different components of the project. Due to the size, complexity of the project, the organization has decided to employ a project manager to oversee the entire process, ensuring alignment with broader business objectives. Now, the way we wrote this, we wrote it with multiple teams, and that's why you needed a project manager. You might need a project manager and only have one team. That gives you that flexibility to do that. At the project kickoff meeting, the project manager, Joanna, outlines the product roadmap, which defines the product's vision, goals, objectives. She emphasizes the importance of aligning each Scrum team's effort with the roadmap to ensure the project's success. Joanna's role involves coordinating activities across the Scrum teams. She regularly meets with the Scrum Masters from each team to review progress and ensure that all teams are aligned with the roadmap. Joanna facilitates a solution by temporarily reallocating resources from another team, ensuring that critical deadlines are met without compromising quality. Now, this might not be anything that you're touching. You might be running pure Scrum and Agile and don't need this piece. That's okay. But for those of you, it seems like more and more are doing the hybrid type setup, then this is just to give you a couple of ideas, okay? All right, so the organization uses a hybrid approach, integrating Agile and traditional project management processes. Joanna plays a crucial role in facilitating this integration. She ensures that the Scrum team's Agile processes are harmonized with the company's existing quality assurance and regulatory compliance frameworks. And this is another little bit of a challenge. We just finished training in Texas, and this was one of the challenges for them, is how do you balance some of these things that we're trying to do with a hybrid project and at the same time comply with regulation? And the truth is, on the regulation pieces, you might not be able to. It is what it is. If the regulation says this, you're going to have to comply. So that might be something that is very traditional because of the regulation, but you might have something over here that's very, very fluid that gives you that flexibility. So Joanna worked with the Scrum Masters to ensure the necessary documentation was produced without disrupting the Agile workflow. Now, you might say, well, wait a second, the reason we're doing Scrum and Agile is so we don't have to have documentation. I heard a consultant one time say, we don't document, we're doing Scrum. Well, let me tell you something, you do document in Scrum and Agile. Now, it's not the same as traditional, but if the requirements is that we have to have some documentation, you do and could and should document in some of these. And so that has to be spelled out up front, but it is important. So Joanna also handles reporting and communication with senior management, external stakeholders. She prepares regular progress reports that synchronize the work of all Scrum teams, providing a clear overview of the project status, potential risk, and mitigation strategies. This allows stakeholders to make informed decisions without delving into the details of each Scrum team's work. Now, notice what we see here. The project manager here is actually overseeing several projects, but her purpose, Joanna's purpose here, is communicating to management so that they feel comfortable with all these projects. Even though they're running Scrum in a hybrid situation, they feel comfortable, and she's making sure to translate what they're doing in each individual project into the metrics and the verbiage that upper management needs to hear. All right, so the project manager's responsibilities would be facilitating cross-functional collaboration, ensure effective communication, collaboration between teams, including the product owner, Scrum Master, and development team, foster a collaborative environment that encourages teamwork and shared responsibilities. Stakeholder management, the project manager, she's going to act as a liaison between the Scrum Agile team, external stakeholders such as executives, customers, or other departments. Communicate project status, risk, issues to stakeholders in a clear and transparent manner. Ensure alignment between the project objectives and the organization's strategic goals. So this role of project manager here is aligning all of these other projects with the strategic plans of the organization. In this case, she's talking to executive management and she's verbalizing the driving of these goals. So it's very important what this project manager would be doing. In risk, she's going to identify, assess, and manage risk impacting the project's success. She's going to collaborate with the team, develop risk mitigation strategies. She's going to monitor and address project risk continuously throughout the project lifecycle. Notice she's not barking out orders on anything. She's working alongside. She's removing impediments. She's removing any kind of challenges or blockades. That's what she's continuing to do in all cases. The project manager challenges transitioning from a command and control role to a facilitative role. Oh my goodness, this is a huge deal. For those of us who've all been in the traditional setting, it's hard to switch over from making decisions and calling the shot to where now you're trying to empower the team and coach the team. That's a difficult thing. Not saying you can't do it. I'm just saying that's a difficult thing because it requires a totally different mindset. Aligning project management practices with Scrum Agile methodologies, coordinating multiple Scrum and Agile teams in a scaled environment with the other methodologies or processes in the organization. And so one of the challenges is how do we make this work with this hybrid setting in this very traditional or regulatory kind of setting? And many of you have that and are doing that right now. All right. So let me close with a couple of things here this morning. So many of you know our website, our 800 number. We have just put up our new webinars for 2025. So we've got some new topics that we're going to be talking about next year. We're going to be talking a little bit more about artificial intelligence. We're also going to be talking about tailoring, which is brand new in PMBOK 7. And so we've just finalized those this morning. And so those will be on our website. They might not be on our website today, but they'll be on our website shortly. Kim's just awesome with it. And so that's one of the things I wanted to mention to you. Second thing is we've got 2 more virtual boot camps. These boot camps are going to align with the new requirements. We're also using the material from PMI. And so these boot camps, we're running about a 97% first-time passing rate. And so we'll be doing both of these virtually. And so the passing rate is 97% first-time passing rate compared to 60% that PMI says is the norm. These are the future webinars that we have for the rest of the year, but don't leave yet because I want to talk to you about a public course that we have coming up and see if you're going to be part of it. So October, we're going to be doing project monitoring, evaluation, and oversight. So we're going to talk about oversight for the project. In November, we're going to talk about win-win vendor relationships, cultivating positive relationships for project success. So how do you get along with your vendors? Some of you have talked about this before. And then December 13th is going to be our last one for the year, empowerment through mentorship, leveraging coaching, mentoring. So it's really going to build off of the real roles that we're talking about and the real skills here about how to coach and mentor other people. So that's going to be one we'll finish the year out. And so that's what our webinars will be for the rest of 2024. This is a public course that we're going to be doing. We have taught this course twice, and I've rewritten it twice to just bring it back full circle. This is a 3-day course, but let me explain how this works. We're going to do 2 days virtual face-to-face, I'm sorry, virtual instructor-led. So October 1 and 2, I'm going to teach this course live. And so if you'd like to be part of this, it's entitled Unleashing the Potential of Artificial Intelligence and Advanced Prompt Engineering in Project Management. So the 2 days that we're live, we're going to be talking about start from scratch and walk through how to understand artificial intelligence, how it can impact project management, how to be able to use it to be able to draft our business case or a charter. We're going to draft some things. I'm actually going to do some live presentations for you to where you can see it happen right there in front of you. And then day 3 is about advanced prompt engineering. And so it's going to be self-paced. And so you're paying for 2 days, but you're going to get the 3rd day free if you sign up for this. Now, here's the thing. I need you to sign up quickly because we already have almost 30 project managers from your crane who are already signed up for this. And so if you want to be part of this, I'd love to have you be part of it. We've taught it both times, and the people have just been super, super impressed of what they have walked away with. When you finish this course, you're going to understand how to use artificial intelligence, not just in project management, but for using it with anything else you want to do, because the skills we're going to teach you here are going to be skills to show you how to be able to drill down in not only in project management, but to drill down for product development or anything else you want to use artificial intelligence for, and you'll be able to have a great foundation. So it's going to happen on October 1st and 2nd. It is going to be registered with PMI, so you'll have PDUs for this. But we need you to go to the website if you'd like to be part of this, sign up. And so for $299, you're going to do 2 instructor-led live. I'm going to be teaching it, and then you'll have 30 days, I believe is what we're giving you, to take the 3rd day, which is going to be part of this, and that's going to be advanced prompt engineering. And so we show some live demonstrations in that, and so you'll have that. That's going to just be given to you just to take it along. So anyway, I'd love to have you in there. We already have like 30 project managers from Ukraine that's in there. They're wanting to learn how to be able to use AI to be able to help them in remodeling and rebuilding their country. So anyway, let me close out with this. Our time is coming to the end. Let me thank you so much it's great to see so many people on here this week. And so let me thank you so much for many of my friends and many of the clients that keep coming back month after month. I appreciate it so much. And so listen, I wish you well. We're coming down to summer's almost over. I know you're probably excited for fall, and it's going to be beautiful here in the Ozarks in the fall. And so let me thank you so much for taking the time this morning to be part of this. Kim will be sending the link out shortly after it all gets processed. And so I wish you well. God bless you guys. Thank you so much again for this month. And so I'll see you next month. Okay. Bye, everybody.